Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
Good morning. Hope you've been finding the episode so far both informative and useful. Today we will be seeing Uttita Parshvakonasana. I would like to emphasize that the entire process and the way in which we have been dealing with the episode so far is to show you how truly nuanced and in-depth the practice of asana is. An asana is not achieved by simply going into a pose or a posture, moving from one posture to another. It truly is a heightened state of awareness and consciousness as described in the sutras, where we spend time engaging every cell in our body in a very, very aligned fashion to make it an asana. It is not simply about going into a posture. Making it an asana involves the integration of every facet of the body and mind. And that is what we intend to show you in the episodes so far and moving ahead. Coming to Parshvakonasana, Parshva means the sides of the body. The side of the body or the lateral sides of the body should be extended and opened. In Parshvakonasana, the entire side flank of the body is engaged, extended, opened and revolved. Towards this, we saw in the previous episodes how Urdhva Baddhangulyasana, Urdhva Hastasana, Trikonasana, etc. are also lateral poses that engage the sides of the body. Hence, in order to approach Uttita Parshvakonasana, the previous poses are mandatory to be practiced regularly. Now let us go ahead and see how to do the asana. Uttita Parshvakonasana. We will now see the parts of the body that we need to keep in mind for Parshvakonasana. Starting from the front, the bone that connects the two sides of the chest, the central bone, is the sternum. From the center throat, extending towards the sides of the shoulder, is the clavicle or the collarbone. The upper arm bone itself or the humerus should be rolled back towards the back of the socket. Moving down towards the thigh, the bone inside the thigh itself and the bone inside the thigh, the femur. As far as the knees are concerned, there is a frontal plate covering the thin shin and thigh bones. This frontal plate is called the patella or the kneecap. As far as the foot is concerned, from the little toe side, the outer edge of the foot, existing or lying on the side of the little toe, is the outer edge of the foot that we again need. The arch of the foot is always going to be lifted such that the outer edge of the foot remains pressed. Moving to the side of the body, this is the area of the armpit, this is the inner side, this is the outer side. This outer armpit, the floating rib on the side, the place where the thigh bone inserts itself into the socket, the outer hip, the outer knee and the outer ankle. This is the protrusive outer ankle bone all the way from the outer ankle to the outer heel. This constitutes the side lateral surface of the body. At the back, across the shoulder to the last floating rib, this entire canvas is the back ribs. The back ribs always engages forward in such a way that the front ribs can be lifted up. This is the surface of the back ribs. Moving down to the hip area, between the two buttocks, you have the flat bone of the sacrum, and then it ends in a pointed tailbone. These are the parts of the body that we need to keep in mind. Now we will see how to go about doing Parshvakonasana. Taking the hands in front of your chest, making sure that the sides of the body is lifted tall and widespread as you open your hands. Jump open your legs apart. The width of the legs should be no less than 4 feet. For those who have problems of the lower hip, knee or ankle, you shouldn't jump apart. You only step your legs wide apart. Having your hands stretched out from the center of the sternum out to the sides of the fingertip, there should be a ripping opening from center to side as the body stays lifted tall, buttock engaged inward, knees and thighs back. The entire anterior surface of the spine should be well lifted. After doing that, you're turning your right foot fully out. As we saw in Virabhadrasana 2, Virabhadrasana 2 is an intermediary for Parshvakonasana, and so you keep the leg, knee, foot turned out, cutting the thigh down to 90 degrees, you go to Virabhadrasana 2. After doing that, make sure that the spine is centrally aligned, the sides of the body is lifted, making sure that there is a good lift first. Then you take your right hand, keep it behind the right foot. The top arm initially comes on the waist. Now if you see, the frontal surface of the body has a mild closure, it falls forward. So you have to really think of the lateral sides of the body. You have to roll the sides of the body back, you have to roll the side of the hip back, side of the floating rib back, outer knee push back, outer ankle press down, open the arch. What we are saying is shoulder, floating rib, hip, outer knee, outer ankle, all of it should be in mind because Parshvakonasana is a laterally exuberant pose. From there you take your top arm up, straight up initially. The purpose of this is to give the chest an end-to-end spreading. From the right lower hand to the left top hand, you have to nicely lift the chest up. Lifting the chest up, pressing the outer edge of the foot, keeping the thigh rooted down. I want you to come up to Virabhadrasana 2. Centrally adjust the spine, turn the foot in, jump with your feet together, hands by the sides of the body. Now we will see how to complete the pose Utthita Parshvakonasana. Taking your hands in front of your chest, standing tall with the chest and wide with the chest, knees and thighs back, weight evenly distributed over both feet, jump open your legs apart, 4 feet apart. Make sure that it's a wide stance, no shorter than 4 feet. From the center of the chest to the fingertips, you'll have to stretch and raise the sides of the body. Turn the right foot completely out. Virabhadrasana 2 is a necessary intermediary for Parshvakonasana, and therefore keeping the outer hip, outer knee and outer foot back and outer heel well pressed, you will have to cut the right leg to a 90 degrees, keeping the spine centrally aligned. Do not allow the knee to come forward, which means that the groin should be opened center to side on both sides, because both hips should be gripped backwards. From there, keeping the spine tall, not allowing it to fall, the control should still be towards the left side, though the right hand is going down. With that in mind, take the right hand behind the left foot. As we ended, initially we keep the hands stretched side to side with the top arm palm facing forward, arm upward, you have to turn the sternum towards the top palm. You have to nicely give that rotation so that the face of the body is not falling down. It has to really wind and come upward, almost as if there is a toppling effect. There, the outer armpit, outer floating rib, outer hip, outer knee and outer ankle must be aligned in one sharp line as much as possible. Now, I would still require this hip to roll out. After rolling the hip out, maintaining like an arrow shooting upward, from the outer heel to outer armpit, you have to stretch the palm over your ear, over your head. Then the practitioner has to anteriorly extend the throat and turn the head to look up at the fingertips. Thus, the cervical neck also should not fall. It should engage in the pose in such a way described. Pressing the back leg, you will have to come back up to Virabhadrasana 2 without diluting the lowering of the root of the thigh. Center your spine and then stand up. Turn your feet in, jump with your feet together in Tadasana.
When a student is not able to take their hand to the ground, what should they do?
When you start with the practice of Parshvakonasana or standing poses, usually it's common that the back is stiff or the basic mobility is not there to take the hand totally to the floor. But then the bottom hand must be grounded. So we'll see how to go about that. We'll now use a block. So I want you to go to Parshvakonasana, turning your foot out, cutting the thigh down, Virabhadrasana 2, weight there. I'm going to keep this block exactly behind the foot where your hand ideally would have been placed. So then you're extending your hands to the side. Take your hand down, grab the block. Now, keep the top hand over the waist for now. Now, when you see your hand is right now, though you're not able to go down, because you have the rooting of the ground hand, down hand, from which you're able to stretch your chest up, from which you're able to take the top hand up, this horizontal stretch end to end is accomplished also because you have a slight distancing between the thigh. Ideally, the back ribs of the right side should be in line with the inner end of the right thigh, okay? But initially when you start with this distance, there is space for you to rotate up. To that extent, there is freedom. So when you initially you can start with your hand on this block, or I may even raise it one level, keep it on a higher platform so that even with this greater freedom you can try to achieve the rotation. This rotation is important to create freedom for movement. Clear? Then you take your hands up, nicely extend the spine, especially anteriorly, then pressing the back leg, you come up. This way, for students who are not, turn your foot in. This way, as I was saying, for students who are not able to take their hands down, can still accrue the benefits of the pose or even a practice because you're able to plant the hand down. So we use a block.
I've seen students unable to rotate their spine. How can that be addressed?
Yes, so the rotation of the spine can be a little bit of a struggle. See, it's important for two reasons. One is that rotation is important to get that lateral extension, which Parshvakonasana so much emphasizes. The second is that rotation is actually the liberation of the spine. It's the freedom by which the spine is able to move, coil and extend. So the rotation is mandatory. We'll see how to approach that. We'll first use a block. I'd like you to go to Virabhadrasana 2 and then to Parshvakonasana. Initially you go where you take your hand behind, right? So I understand what you say. You say that the chest is fallen and so you're unable to get that rolling opening, yeah? For that, instead of keeping your hand behind, I'd like you to keep your hand in front. The same way, hand down in front. Immediately when you keep your hand in front, the face of the body becomes a little open. But still, I'd like you to use a block so that you get some spacing to heighten that rotation. Of course, the previous method where you keep the hand in front of the foot and try is good, but for students who are unable to take their hand down, then you use a brick, create some spacing. Ideally, with that, you'll have to topple the outer edge of the body. That is, as I said, outer armpit, outer hip, outer knee, outer ankle gripped. This entire surface has to really flip. For that flipping, you have to grip the block and almost make the back side of the right ribs align with the inner edge of the right thigh. Gripping the block, you have to create that communication upon which you roll the outer edge of the body. This is one way of doing it. You can come up. Another alternative or an approach is to use the tressler. This is a tressler. I'd like you to stand facing forward, close to the tressler, keeping the back foot aligned with the tressler and stepping away. You're going to be turning the foot out, that is the front foot out, and then I'm going to give you a block once again. Okay, I'm giving you a taller block than normal here. I want you to go down until you hit the Virabhadrasana rooting of the thigh, and then keeping the brick in line with the front of the foot, you're descending your hand into the brick. The top arm nicely winds around the tressler. So as you wind it, this winding action must be able to really profusely roll the chest out. And using the bottom bar, you have to make sure that this outer hip really rolls to that bottom bar, tucking the front leg buttock forward. Front leg buttock goes forward, the entire outer edge of the body should flip in line with this lateral surface. From there, you press the back leg up and come up. You see that the face of the body is open. That's the way we address the rotation. There are several ways to do it, so many proper arrangements. We are just showing two simple approaches.
Sometimes I find my knee falling forwards and therefore I find the pose a little inhibitive. How can I correct that?
So as we saw in Virabhadrasana 2, if the knee falls forward, the hip doesn't open, and that openness is important to accomplish Parshvakonasana, that is the opening of Parshvakonasana. What I would like you to do is we'll just use a brick in front of your foot, and I'm going to keep it at this level for now. I'd like you to go to Virabhadrasana 2 stance. Extend your hand to the side like Virabhadrasana 2. Here, rolling the hip out, roll the knee out as much as possible. But then, I want you to extend the side of the body and lower until you're able to push your elbow against the knee. Push the elbow against the knee. And I really want this to be a strong push where using the hand, you're able to roll the inner edge of the thigh out. Okay? Now, with that grip, lower your hand to the block. Maintaining that grip, give a rotation to your floating rib. That is, you push back here and you rotate up here. And every time you rotate, you have to give a nudge to your knee back, to your inner thigh back, and rotate upward. So here you make sure that the opening of the leg or the knee doesn't come in the way of the pose. We now saw how to do Utthita Parshvakonasana. We also answered some questions which address the position of the knee, spine, etc. as a means of increasing the alignment and refinement in an asana. Until now, we've been seeing standing poses, and we've paid a lot of attention to the position of the spine. Why are we paying so much attention to the position of the spine? The spine is one of the marvelous features in the human body that houses the spinal cord and connects to the brain stem. And therefore, when we are making alterations and adjustments to the spine, there is a great degree of response in the brain as well. Facets of calmness, alertness, stability, confidence, these are the various changes that you see through systematic practice. Preceding Parshvakonasana, we saw Virabhadrasana 2, and prior to Virabhadrasana 2, we saw Prasarita Padottanasana. We see how these chain of asanas benefit one another, and that is how a sequence is formed. Every preceding asana helps the forthcoming asana, and therefore constantly linking asanas one after the other in a way by which the yoga practice itself can be refined is the methodology we practice in Iyengar Yoga. Hence, sequencing is one of the powerful, pivotal portals. We will now see some of the benefits of practicing this asana. As we always constantly reinforce, an asana when correctly practiced is not only benefits, it's a holistic experience. But when improperly practiced, we have to make sure that we are paying a lot of attention to correct it. Now, as far as Utthita Parshvakonasana is concerned, it exercises the entire length of the spine, starting from the tailbone, moving to the lumbar, moving to the dorsal, the cervical. All parts of the vertebrae are integrated. The appendicular skeleton, such as the wrists, the elbows, the shoulder, the knee, the ankle, those parts of the joint which belong to the peripheral body, they are all stabilized, strengthened. When we go deep down in Virabhadrasana 2 position, that precedes Parshvakonasana, we give a lot of emphasis to opening the hip, opening the groin, and therefore that sense of opening constantly revitalizes and mobilizes the pelvis. Moving